For the first time ever, the Harry Potter universe feels hollow. Sam's cup of tea. Sam's cup of tea. Hello and welcome to Sam's Cup of Tea. Today I'll be reviewing Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald. This is a review coming from somebody, just to give you some context. I really love Harry Potter. I grew up with the books and I grew up with the movies, and I was always happy with the movies. So in this one, I was really looking forward to seeing Grindelwald, because I thought that this is where the story would have much more focus. The end of Fantastic Beasts, we see Grindelwald. It's a real shame that this movie didn't make sense to me and I didn't enjoy it, because there are a lot of great things about this movie. The cast, I think, is really strong. The score is absolutely brilliant. The effects are massively improved from the first one. I remember the first one being very CGI heavy and thinking it just felt like the world had less weight to it. In this one, the world still doesn't have much weight to it, which Harry Potter seemed always to do. Especially the David Yates one seemed very grounded in reality. But for some reason, Fantastic Beasts and the new one, Crimes of Grindelwald, seem to be sort of floaty, very sort of like not planted in reality, more akin to like a superhero film. So the CGI is great, the music's great, and the cast is really good. But that is where it ends. I should add as well that the thing I really liked was the Ministry of Magic. They go to Europe and there's the French Ministry of Magic, and that was really well done. The designs were beautiful. All of that stuff, the designs, the CGI, everything like that is great. But where it falls short is that I didn't know what the hell was going on. I went to see it with my girlfriend. She watched Harry Potter recently for the first time with me, and she understood like pretty much the whole story throughout. A few questions here or there, but the main plot was like understood. She'd seen Fantastic Beasts and enjoyed that, and she had no idea either. And from the beginning to end, I couldn't tell you what the plot was actually heading towards. There's so many different characters at play, some of which link back to Fantastic Beasts, and some that have been introduced in this movie. So like Newt Scamander is the main character. There are people from his past that are just all of a sudden here in this, and in a big way. And it's just very daunting to take that on. I don't know, maybe it's me. Maybe I should have done more homework. But I feel like I've got a good grasp on Harry Potter. And yet with this movie, I felt like I didn't know what the hell was going on. And it's not just the coherence of plot points. It's also the way that scenes are presented. Something will happen and you're just like, what just happened then? And then out of nowhere, and this is towards the end, it's not a spoiler, but there is a scene where there are like, it must be 5 characters or 6 characters that for it feels like no reason they're all coming together, and they're in this room, this small room, and they're just spouting exposition to one another. And they're literally explaining who they are. I'm this guy, my family's this, and then this other character, I can't remember her name, she kind of pipes up and says, no, actually, you're this, and this is why. And she literally presents a family tree, like literally in CGI, this kind of family tree, as though to say, I know it's difficult for you to understand what's actually happening. Here's a physical representation of what's happening, so you can see this person's this person, I'm related to this person. And Harry Potter never felt like that. Harry Potter never felt like that. And it just seems off. And, Grindelwald is the villain in this. He has very little to do. And you get the sense that, they've been talking about there's going to be another 2 or 3 films after this. And it really feels like that. Because of the way that the movie presents itself. It doesn't have, like Harry Potter, when you watch a Harry Potter movie, say the 3rd or 4th one, and there's 7 or 8 films, you know that Voldemort's not going to be destroyed. The final battle will not take place in this movie. But what the stories do a really good job of is have their own self-contained story within the larger plot that takes place over the 7 or 8 movies. So you'll have, for example, The Prisoner of Azkaban. The resolution in that movie is the Patronus charm, discovering Sirius, discovering that he's not actually a villain. He's the antagonist in that. Goblet of Fire, the Triwizard Tournament, and the Voldemort fight is enough for you to be like, wow, and he survives and gets away, and Cedric Diggory dies. Order of the Phoenix, Voldemort comes back and he fights Dumbledore, and there's the big, huge fight in the Ministry of Magic. So when the movie finishes, you feel like you've got some resolution. In the Crimes of Grindelwald, it just feels like we're building up these moments, but everyone just has a few words to say. It feels like Dumbledore is in it, but in a really sort of half-hearted way. And I've got a few theories as to why these don't work. Even Fantastic Beasts, but more so Crimes of Grindelwald suffers with this. I feel like in Harry Potter, we enter a world that's confusing and very in-depth, very name-heavy, very rules and magic spells and people with crazy names, and people are related to each other, and history, rich history. We experience it through Harry, and Harry is like us. He doesn't have a clue what's happening. He's very wet behind the ears, so to speak, and so we experience that world. Even in the later parts, when Harry becomes more mature and more experienced, we experience him going to the Ministry, actually fighting Death Eaters. We experience those things through him. Quidditch, for example. If I was just to explain Quidditch to you, it's this game where you're on blooms and there's a snitch and all that stuff. In the movie, it's presented through Harry. He's trying to grab the snitch. The game's going on in the background. And you sort of learn the game through him. So it doesn't feel like exposition just being presented to you and just thrown on you. This movie lacks that, because the main if you can say main character, Newt Scamander feels like he's supposed to be the main character, but there is nobody in the whole universe who is a non-wizard to begin with. You could say that the guy, what's his name, who was in the first one, who got his memory erased. I don't even remember his name. See, this is the thing. I don't remember anybody's name. He had his memory erased and he's in this new one. And there's basically a non-explanation as to why he is back in this one. And he's a non-magician. But this movie, unlike the first one, doesn't really focus on his perspective. So everybody else is already a wizard and he's disapparating and disappearing at different points, and it just feels like they understand the world and you don't, and you're constantly playing catch up behind them. And he in this is less of a comic relief. In a way he's a bit of comic relief, but you're less seeing it through his eyes, and it just makes for a very disorientating experience. Disorienting experience. It does not feel coherent. There is a part towards the end when there's a big confrontation that kind of people get killed and there's wizards fighting and which sounds really epic, but it feels so flat. And the way that they get to that point, I didn't know how the end confrontation even happened. This door opens and I remember turning to my girlfriend and saying, how did they get here? There's no sense of place or where you are. People are constantly disapparating and then appearing here, and we're at this place, and why is she there? Who is she? Why is she? Nothing seems to come together. I'm sure there are some fans that will really, really relish this, and but I don't feel like it's a strength at all. Things don't make sense. The Muggle guy, the non-magician guy, is literally in the middle of this huge big battle that's kind of killing wizards left, right, and centre, and somehow he just manages to escape unscathed. And it just seems like, I suppose you're focusing on those things because there isn't really a coherent story, and there are little grains of it with the art direction, the music, the effects. Grindelwald, I mean, Johnny Depp plays him well. It's good to see Dumbledore as a young guy, but it feels like they're saving all of it for the next movie. And it's just, everybody loves the Harry Potter universe, so why wouldn't you want more? And you have to have someone to really strive for. Newt Scamander is not that in this movie, and pretty much nobody is. The only person that I found interesting was Grindelwald and Newt Scamander. There's the guy that Grindelwald is trying to ascertain, and there's a big twist as to who he is. He's as dull as dishwater. Really, really just deadpan, barely says anything. The fact that he's got the powers that are really focused on in the first Fantastic Beasts, it isn't really explored in this either. And he has this kind of relationship with Nagini. Nagini is the snake, becomes the snake, but she doesn't have anything to do. Other than her initial appearance, she's just sort of casting looks. I don't remember anything about her character. She's sort of with him, but I mean, it's just a complete mess. It really is. And it's a shame, because I really wanted to like this. Because I felt quite lukewarm about Fantastic Beasts 1. I thought this was where they were going to pick it up. My other theory as to why this doesn't work is to do with the writing and to do with the screenplay. I read that in this one, J.K. Rowling wrote the screenplay, so it's directly an adaptation. So, you know, David Yates directed some of my favourite Harry Potter films, so I don't think it's the problem with the direction necessarily, but it's that same symptom of what happened with George Lucas, where the original trilogy of Star Wars was really great, and And years go by, and they become kind of mythologized, and the creator is always, George Lucas is great, he's brilliant, but he didn't actually direct Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. It was somebody else, and they used his ideas, and they basically transferred his language into something that can be understood by an audience and made sense of in a filmic language. The same happened with the Harry Potter books. J.K. Rowling wrote the books, and then somebody else, or I don't know who wrote the screenplays, but I don't think it was her that wrote the screenplays for the movies. They translated, cut her stories down into a concise piece, because books are different to movies. They just are. And you can have a really exposition-heavy book that's just amazing, but if you try and translate that to a movie, it just doesn't work. This feels like that. It feels like they were like, J.K. Rowling cannot do anything wrong. Everything she touches is just pure brilliance, and she's just ended up writing a lot of jumbled up stuff that maybe on the page seems to make a lot of sense. Maybe if this was a book, it would really, really make sense, but in the context of a movie, it just seems like a mess. There isn't a distinguishable thread of, like, where are you vying for? For the first time ever, the Harry Potter universe feels hollow. It feels, I'm not saying it is a cash grab, but it feels a little bit like the enthusiasm and love we have for the universe is being exploited a little bit, and they just think that showing something is good enough. Like, there's a moment when the movie takes you to Hogwarts for a brief period, and the music comes in, da, 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 and you're like, yeah. But this doesn't really it doesn't feel like anything. It just feels like, it just doesn't feel like there's any heart to it. It just feels like an amusement park, an amusement ride. Now, that's not to say that they won't pick it up in the future, and that maybe the next one will be great. And maybe they'll take something from the criticisms that they've heard from reviewers and things like that, and just make the next one. They've got the foundation to make everything work, I think. The only thing that I feel that they're lacking is a coherent protagonist that knows knows a little less about the universe that they're in. Newt Scamander feels like he's too familiar with the world that he's in. And because we're not, we've seen Harry Potter, but the world they're in is different. It's not in Hogwarts. It's out in the world, in the magic world. And he seems very capable and very understanding. The only thing that his arc, I suppose, in this movie is about him not picking a side. His brother says, "Oh, you're a centrist. You're in the middle." And by the end, he picks a side, which I suppose is the only significant leap that's made in this movie. But again, his brother is just this kind of, it seems like a very tenuous relationship that is all of a sudden in this movie, in this big way from the beginning, and it wasn't explored in the first one. And I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily if it's done well, but it's not done well. And there are people linked to his brother. There's a character linked to his brother, and just nothing. For me, nothing had emotional weight to it when it happened. There are things that happen in the movie that are supposed to be like gut-wrenching, and they just weren't. And that is the first time in Harry Potter. Usually in the Harry Potter movies, towards the end there was always some climactic scene or set piece that really, really hits you hard, because the rest of the movie has a few scares here and there, but he's quite light-hearted, and then it hits you with something. This movie feels like that all the way through and tries to do that in this, but it feels like so much of the end set piece is a lead on into the next movie that it doesn't have any conclusion. It just sort of ends, and you're like, right, well, I guess that's going to be explored in the next movie. And who was it that did this, and who was it that died, and who? It's just a confusing mess, and I really, really hope that they don't carry on like this. What I think they should do for the next one is basically let J.K. Rowling write a screenplay or write a story of it, and then get somebody else in, or a few other people, to edit it down and make it more coherent, because there is just too much going on. It feels like an unedited book. That's what it feels like. So yeah, that's my review. Now, with reviews, I'm going to give the score between 1 and 5. So with this movie, I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5, because it lacks any sense of weight or direction. It's massively confusing. The music's great. There are really great effects and designs in it, and there are moments that you can enjoy in it. I imagine if you're a kid, a very young kid, you'll probably enjoy the spectacle of it, and you're not looking for something that makes sense necessarily. So in that sense, it's not a complete failure. There are things to like, and there are things to give you an idea of what they could have done and what they can do. So there is potential there, but it is really crushing to see it wasted in this way, and to see the actors wasted and the assets wasted. So the final verdict is a 2 out of 5. I don't recommend you going to see it, but if you're a hardcore Harry Potter fan, by all means go. But Jesus, watch Fantastic Beasts before it, because you will not know what's going on. Thanks for watching. My name's Sam. Goodbye.